My wife, Batty, believed I was oblivious to her clandestine plans, assuming I was either foolish or blissfully ignorant of her growing romantic involvement with her coworker, Ryan. She presumed I would passively accept her infidelity, allowing her to continue an emotional affair with him while remaining her devoted husband. However, little did she realize that I had been harboring suspicions for quite some time. I observed the subtle changes and unmistakable signs of unfaithfulness. Despite my attempts to discuss my concerns with her on numerous occasions, my worries were consistently dismissed. Batty adamantly denied any wrongdoing, attributing my unease to baseless insecurities and possessiveness. Faced with her persistent denial, I reluctantly hired a private investigator, unwilling to turn a blind eye to the truth. My stance against infidelity had been clear from the outset of our relationship, reiterated over the course of our 10-year marriage. Seated in the office of John Thompson, the private investigator, I experienced a mix of emotions as he presented his findings. Relief washed over me when he clarified that Batty had not engaged in physical infidelity. However, that relief was short-lived when he added the ominous word, yet, suggesting that her romantic involvement with Brian was a ticking time bomb. According to the PI report, Batty and Brian had developed a close bond, colloquially referred to as work spouses. Disliking the term, I firmly asserted that Batty had only one spouse: me. The evidence presented included daily lunches, hand-holding, close proximity, and intimate moments captured in photographs. The infuriating images fueled my anger towards Brian. In addition to lunches, the lovebirds would work late together frequently, even though there was no valid reason to do so. It was as if they wanted to avoid going home to their respective spouses and milk as much us time out of each day as possible. The PI, having monitored Batty's communications, provided me with a summary of their emails and texts, acknowledging the illegality of his actions. Although I couldn't use the evidence in a divorce, it served my personal need for confirmation. Thompson refused to provide actual copies of the messages, but assured me that, despite heated conversations and occasional attempts by Brian to belittle me, Batty never spoke disparagingly of me. The evidence confirmed their romantic involvement, even if the declarations of love were absent from their exchanges. While seated in his office, contemplating my next moves, Thompson delivered the most disheartening news yet. Brian's wife, unbeknownst to me, was going to visit her mother for a 3-day weekend, which gave Batty and Brian a chance to meet and cement their relationship. The sole obstacle standing in their way was my presence. They weren't sure how they could spend the night together if I were still around. Since I wasn't going out of town, it would be nearly impossible to get away with it. Various plans were considered. One was to tell me that Batty was going on a girls-only trip for the weekend, but the fear of me discovering the truth through her friends led them to discard the notion. Another proposal was to coax me into going out of town, with the suggestion of organizing a golf trip, meeting a resolute refusal on my part. Eventually, a novel but straightforward approach emerged: honesty. Brian, convinced I was predisposed to tolerate infidelity to preserve a semblance of marital bliss, persuaded Batty that her liaison with him would somehow enhance our family life and relationship. He convinced her that all she had to do was tell me what she had planned to do with Brian, and I would give in and let her do it. The audacity of Brian's assumption about me was astounding, but even more surprising was Batty's acceptance of his manipulative narrative. She had to know there was no way I would put up with it. If she didn't realize it, then she was mentally unstable. Thompson disclosed that this was the extent of the evidence they possessed. Armed with this information, I returned home and requested continued monitoring of Batty's messages. On Friday, Thompson informed me that Batty intended to confront me the following Monday after work. She planned to reveal her intention to go on a date with Brian that Friday night, involving dinner, dancing, and culminating in a night at a hotel. Subsequently, she would come home to me on Saturday or maybe Sunday. Batty and Brian, in a bizarre twist, had rehearsed the entire dialogue, convincing themselves that I would acquiesce to her demands. Anticipating my initial upset and anger, Batty aimed to reassure me that it was a one-time occurrence, despite their mutual awareness of its ongoing nature. She even proposed post-intervention intimacy with me as a reward for my supposed understanding. With only 2 days to prepare for the impending confrontation, labeled by Batty and Brian as an intervention, I resolved to turn the tables and transform it into my interdiction. Over the weekend, I dedicated my time to analyzing various scenarios, contemplating how to navigate the tumultuous state of my marriage and whether I even desire to salvage it. Uncertain about my feelings for Batty, a clear plan gradually unfolded in my mind. Confront the issue head-on and bring closure to our relationship. During the initial phase of our marriage, Batty and I reveled in blissful happiness, sharing every aspect of our lives. She was not only my spouse but also my confident and intimate companion. However, over time, that connection seemed to dissipate, leaving me to question the longevity of such unions. Perhaps my perception of marriage was overly traditional and idealized, envisioning a partnership weathering life's challenges together. Both of us had experienced failed marriages before, and contemplating another failure led me to question the very institution of marriage itself. In a world marked by fleeting moments, rapidly changing cultures, pervasive social media, and instant gratification, the concept of marriage appeared increasingly outdated, akin to dinosaurs and compact discs. Entertaining the thought that if Batty wished to be with Brian, perhaps I should let her, I quickly shook off the notion, refusing to let myself be cuckolded. Despite my waning affection for her, surrendering her to Brian was out of the question. My resolve solidified just as my wife called me on Monday afternoon, disrupting my work routine. Starting the conversation with a casual tone, I questioned the unusual call, sensing something significant was afoot. Batty, using an endearing term, assured me nothing was wrong, but insisted on discussing a matter of importance later that day. In response, I subtly hinted at having big news to share as well, setting the stage for our evening conversation. With a tinge of suspicion, she probed for details, but I evaded, citing the need to complete my monthly report. As I ended the call and informed my boss of my early departure, the gravity of the impending confrontation sank in, prompting preparations for what I had now termed the interdiction. Seated at the kitchen table, the clock striking 5:27, the garage door announced Batty's return. My nerves clashed with an undercurrent of anger, yet I strived to maintain a composed exterior as raw emotions surged within me. An open bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, chilling on ice, awaited our conversation with 2 glasses at the ready. 2 minutes later, Batty entered alone, dropping her keys and purse on the countertop. Relief washed over me at her solo entrance, the absence of Brian simplified matters, prompting a forced smile. "Hi, honey," I echoed the endearment she had used earlier. "Welcome home. Do you need some time before we talk, or do you want to jump right in?" My immediate desire to engage in conversation caught her off guard. She likely expected the discussion to unfold gradually, unprepared for such a swift confrontation. Refusing to cede control, I aimed to keep her on edge, disrupting the meticulously planned script she had in mind. "I wasn't expecting you to be sitting here waiting, but yeah," she said. "I guess the sooner we get started, the sooner we can go on with our evening," she replied, settling across from me. Forcefully, I asserted, "I'd like to go first with my news, if that's okay with you. Do you mind?" Hesitant, she agreed. No, that's fine." Without waiting for her response, I poured 2 glasses of wine, placing one in front of her. "Good, would you care for a glass of wine?" "Yeah, that would be great," she said, sighing as she took a sip. I promptly refilled her glass. "I've given this a lot of thought," I began, deliberately pausing to build tension. Batty leaned forward, her gaze intense. "I'm not going to beat around the bush. There's no sense in dragging it out." "What is it?" she asked. "I want a divorce," I stated directly, allowing the weight of my words to settle. It took a moment for the realization to dawn on Batty. Confusion morphed into shock, then fear and concern as she worried about my knowledge of her affair with Brian. "Why?" she asked cautiously. "I don't love you anymore," I declared, observing her reaction. It was as if I had struck her in the chest. "You what?" she stammered, grappling with my revelation. "I fell out of love with you, Batty. I don't remember exactly when I stopped loving you." I lied, knowing precisely when. "It's been a long time coming. I tried to ignore it, but lately, it's just been harder and harder not to face the truth." "What are you talking about?" she asked, on the verge of tears. Her unexpected emotional response surprised me. "Do you recall when we first got married?" I inquired. "Remember how every free moment was spent together? Whether it was a trip to the grocery store, a movie night, or a visit to the mall, we did it as a team. It was as if we couldn't bear to be apart." Batty nodded, acknowledging the memories. "I remembered," she said. "We both had jobs, yet we made a special effort to have lunch together at least twice a week. We eagerly anticipated the end of the workday to rush home and be in each other's company. I missed you profoundly every day, looking forward to coming home to you, sharing kisses, and more often than not, making love. We shared our hobbies. Remember those pottery classes you convinced me to attend? It wasn't about the pottery itself. It was about sharing an experience with you. I loved every moment of it, watching you and helping you. I was captivated by your enthusiasm, just as I was with painting those Christmas village buildings." We reminisced about the time spent painting miniature buildings for a Christmas display, a tedious yet enjoyable activity we undertook together. "Your buildings were always better than mine," Batty remarked. "Remember the countless nights we spent at this table, meticulously applying paint to roof tiles?" I prompted. Batty nodded again. "I loved you so much then. We also dedicated hours to coloring those oversized posters from our trip to Myrtle Beach, long before adult coloring books became popular. We still have hundreds of those colored pens, but much like our love, they've all dried up." Batty visibly cringed. "My love hasn't dried up," she retorted defensively. Ignoring her defensiveness, I pressed on. "Our friends invited us. We did everything together, from long walks to daily hand-holding. If I needed trimmer string for the weed whacker, you'd come to the hardware store with me. If you wanted to shop for clothes, I'd accompany you and wait outside the changing room." "Yeah, but you hated that," she challenged. "No, I didn't," I agreed. "I didn't care about the clothes. I thought you looked beautiful in everything. I was there to be with you. I could have stayed home and watched sports. We discussed how other women in the neighborhood got together for bunco or girls' nights out, but you never wanted to go. Do you remember why?" Batty wiped a tear from her cheek. "Yes, I remember," she said. "You said you didn't want to spend time with a bunch of hens when you could hang out with me instead. Many nights we cuddled under a blanket and watched You've Got Mail." "I love that movie," Batty said, fighting back tears. "We must have watched it at least 100 times," I said, refilling her wine glass once more. "I still want to watch it with you," Batty exclaimed. "I don't want a divorce. I thought we would grow old together, taking cooking lessons, participating in ballroom dancing, or simply lying in bed reading books. Anything as long as we were together. But Batty, we've drifted apart. I don't have an exact starting point for when it began," I confessed, gazing into my wife's eyes. "We went from having lunches together 2 or 3 times a week to a once-a-week lunch date. It was Batty who initiated the change, claiming she didn't have time for frequent lunch outings. That turned out to be a fabrication. She continued having lunches, but with someone else. Gradually, we stopped having lunch together entirely. I started joining my coworkers, finding myself enjoying their company perhaps a bit too much. I admitted, deliberately avoiding laying blame on Batty. I sought to steer clear of confrontation, not desiring an immediate dispute. This conversation had the potential to devolve into a contentious exchange, a scenario I aimed to delay, at least for the moment. Coming home early to spend time together lost its significance. We found ourselves working late, often returning home distant or distracted. "Why didn't you ever say anything about it?" Batty questioned. "If I had known it was important to you, I would have tried to have lunch with you more often or not work late so much." "You're right," I concurred, aligning with her, despite having raised the issue numerous times before. "I wish I had figured out why being with me wasn't as important to you. Maybe if I had, I could have made changes so that you would want to spend more time with me. I feel like I failed badly in that regard." I presented an image of taking responsibility for our growing apart, a distortion of the truth. My motive was clear. I wanted her to recall our past and ponder her role in its deterioration before unveiling the revelation about Brian. I knew that confronting her with Brian's involvement first would likely lead to an ugly confrontation, with me painted as a controlling, jealous partner. Before exposing what I knew, I aimed to prompt her reflection on what we had and her contribution to its demise. As time passed, we stopped doing almost everything together. You embraced your girls' night out, and I turned to poker nights. You enjoyed spa weekends while I went golfing. Batty, we could go days without more than a superficial conversation about the weather or the latest news. Our intimate life suffered too, often. We were too tired or not in the mood. In the early days of our marriage, our passion was insatiable. I couldn't keep my hands off you. We'd skip dinner to bring joy to each other all night, head out to the hot tub for some naughty fun. Yet we haven't even turned on the hot tub in over a year. I didn't think that's what you wanted, Batty countered, offering a rationale that seemed more like an attempt to shift blame onto me. "Oh God, no," I chuckled. "I never stopped wanting it. I'm just as eager now as I was 10 years ago. I just stopped wanting it with you." I could sense the depth of the cut, as she believed she had been the one rejecting our intimacy. Despite the pain, I found a bitter amusement in the situation. "What?" Batty's voice cracked. She seemed genuinely surprised. "You didn't want to be intimate with me." "I've lost all interest in being intimate with you," I admitted into the tense atmosphere. You became distant, unresponsive. It felt like you wanted it to be over quickly so you could return to something more interesting, like knitting. All this time, I still craved the weekend bed marathons we used to have. Hell, you didn't even want me to give you pleasure. "You did not," Batty argued. "You came in me." "You what?" she shouted. "Sorry, Batty," I added, twisting the knife. "It's me, not you." She stared at me. Her tears dried up, her face red. It wasn't clear if it was from anger, frustration, or embarrassment. I refilled her empty wine glass. She took a long swig. "It was just a matter of time," I continued, "before we would start finding someone else with whom we wanted to spend our time." I purposely left the subject ambiguous, knowing she assumed it was me. Suddenly, she spoke angrily. "Are you cheating on me? Have you fallen in love with someone else?" "Batty, you know how I feel about infidelity. I swore an oath to you when we got married, and I take that oath seriously. I know your first husband cheated on you, just like my first wife slept with a coworker behind my back. I would never do that to you, just as I know you would never stoop so low as to try to cuckold me by cheating with another man. How could you think I would do that?" "I'm sorry," she apologized. "You're right. I know you wouldn't do that." She looked guilty and couldn't meet my eyes. Her hands were shaking. "We're waiting until we're divorced to hook up for the first time," I declared, strongly implying that I had a new love interest. "And that's where I get back to my big news. I've already met with the lawyer and prepared the papers. You should be served with them on Friday." "Wait, what?" she asked, growing frantic. "I said you'll be served on Friday with divorce papers," I told her, trying not to grin. "It's for the best. That way you can have your freedom back and do what you want. So can I. We can admit that the last 10 years were a waste of our time and move on." "They weren't a waste of time to me," she snapped. "Oh, come on, Batty," I said. "I think you want this just as much as I do. I mean, let's be real. You haven't wanted to be with me for a long time. Our wedding was a mistake. I'm not the man you want to be with." "Yes, you are," she argued. "I don't want a divorce. You can't just get a divorce because you want to." I don't want to divorce you. I want to be married to you. Forever. I love you. I'm sorry, Batty, but I don't love you anymore. This is a no-fault divorce state, so we can just split all the assets 50-50. While it's theoretically possible to get more than half of the assets, that's only in cases of proven adultery, and neither of us is cheating or likely to do so before Friday, right? So, let's make a clean break. I'd appreciate it if you could join me at the bank tomorrow to evenly divide the money from all our accounts. We'll have to open new accounts, get new credit cards, and change all the utilities. Plus, we'll need to sell the house. I've arranged for a realtor to come on Wednesday to get it listed for us. Wait, Batty shouted. You're moving too fast. I don't know what to do. Please stop. She started crying again. Don't worry. I've already packed my bags and will be staying in a hotel room from now until I find a permanent place. You can stay here until the house sells. Wait. Goddammit. Batty, she yelled. Please, wait. There's no need to wait, I said. Right? We shouldn't put this off any longer. I mean, we need to get it all taken care of before Friday. Don't we? Why? What's so damned important about Friday? She demanded. Well, you're going on a date with your boyfriend, Brian, on Friday, right? Isn't that the day you two plan to spend the night in a hotel together? Batty froze, her eyes looking like they were about to pop out of her head. Her mouth hung open, resembling a dying fish. She tried to speak, but only a sputtering sound came out. Did I have the day wrong? Hang on, I said as I pulled the manila folder out from under a stack of Better Homes and Gardens magazines and flipped it open. I pulled out the summary sheet from the private investigator's report and slid it between us, showing it to Batty. I pointed to the part about her plans to sleep with Brian on Friday night. Nope, I'm right. See, it says right here, you and Brian have reservations at the Gaylord Texan for this Friday night. It's not. She started, but I cut her off. It's not what it looks like. I asked, completing the sentence for her. Oh, do I need to show you the photographs of you and Brian making out at lunch? She stared at me as the tears flowed again. I'm sorry, she said softly. Now I remember when it was I stopped loving you. I said with a big smile on my face. I stopped loving you the day I found out you were planning to turn me into a cuckold with your coworker, just like my ex-wife. I'm sorry, honey, she whispered, trying desperately to convince me. I don't love Brian. It was just a fling, something to spice up our relationship. I'd go over to his place for the night, and then you and I would do it all weekend like we used to. Brian said you'd love it, that it would turn you on and spice up our intimate life. Yeah, that's the way to diversify our intimate life. Instead of engaging in intimacy with me, you brighten it up by sleeping with someone else. That makes sense. No, but well, she couldn't even get the sentence out. She changed tactics. Brian said you would do it if you want me to be happy. I want you to be happy, I said. I want you to be happy with me like we were once. I don't want you to be happy with some other man. Did you become stupid or something? How could you think I would be okay with this? You had to know how I feel about infidelity. I did, but she struggled for some way to rationalize her actions. This wouldn't be infidelity. I wouldn't be cheating. You would give me your permission. Not in this lifetime, I said. I know that now. I should have realized it all along. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was bored and lonely. Brian got me excited again. Bored and lonely. How could you be bored and lonely when we were happily in love and enjoyed all our time together? I don't know, but she began again. Did you ever stop to think that you were bored and lonely because you cut us off? You stopped having lunch with me. You stopped spending time with me and doing things with me. You chose to avoid me and put yourself in that situation. You chose to spend your time with him instead of me. So if you were bored and lonely, you created that condition specifically so Brian could take away the boredom and loneliness. I don't think I did that, she said as she stared at me. She shook her head. No, I can't believe I would do that. I thought you stopped coming to have lunch with me. Because you told me to, don't you remember? You kept telling me you were too busy. Then, one Wednesday, our lunch date day, I showed up to pick you up, and you didn't even bother to come to the lobby to tell me you couldn't go. You texted me to go on and eat lunch without you. I stopped coming after that, and you never once even brought up the fact that we stopped having lunch. I don't think you even realized it. Batty looked down at her hands. I didn't. You were so caught up in your world to notice you were losing me. You were all about you and Brian. Well, now you can have him. I don't need him. She blurted out in response, looking down at me. I want you. I want us. I want us to be like we used to be. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything. I gave up on us. It's too late, I said, shaking my head. You can't mean that. I haven't cheated on you. We haven't done anything. I won't see him again. I swear it. I'll quit my job. I'll go work someplace else. Please, I don't want to lose you. I still love you. You cheated on me every way a wife can, except one. But that's the most important one. We didn't sleep together. I was stupid. I was infatuated with Brian. I didn't love him. I only ever loved you. I don't know what I was thinking. I would have gotten over him and come back to you once I got it out of my system. But it's over now. I see it now. I know it was stupid. I was stupid. Brian doesn't mean anything to me. Please, baby, please don't leave me. It isn't that easy, Batty. You already went too far. I disagreed. I didn't do anything. We were only friends, she exclaimed. You were supposed to be friends with me more than someone else, I countered. I have a lot of female friends. I don't kiss them. I never took our time to spend with them. I never replace you with them. And I never once plotted to sleep with them and force you to agree to it. Batty lowered her head into her hands, sobbing openly. I'll never neglect you or take you for granted again. I swear it. Please, can't we treat this as a big mistake? Can't you forgive me and give me another chance? This is not Monopoly where you can get a get-out-of-jail-free card, I told her. You didn't just make a big mistake. You forsook our love and gave your heart to another man. No, he never had my heart. My heart was always yours. And you were going to give him your body. But I didn't. You stopped me. Damn it. Don't you love me enough to fight for me? Do I mean that little to you? You meant everything to me. I would have fought anyone for you. I would have died for you. Now, I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. Batty let out a shrieking wail. She grabbed my hands and tried to pull me to her. No, please. You can't mean that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You have to believe me. I believe you're sorry, I said. That shows me you're not completely self-absorbed and heartless. Then, can you give me another chance? Please, I'm begging you. Please don't throw me away. I'm not throwing you away, Batty. You did it for me. I truly do believe you're sorry. I do. Maybe someday I can forgive you, but it doesn't change anything. I do not love you any longer. It's over. But don't worry. You always have Brian to comfort you. Brian is married, she said between sobs. He only wanted to sleep with me. He didn't want a relationship. I chuckled. Well, he may have a change of heart now. I'm sure his wife had a lot to say to him today when he got home. She and I are using the same divorce lawyer. Batty's mouth fell open again. I pushed the manila folder across the table to her. The full report from the investigator is in here, along with the photos of you and Brian. His wife has a copy. Also in there is all the information from my attorney about the divorce and how we propose to divide the assets. I suggest you read it all over. No, baby, please, she begged. Don't do this. If you want to go to the bank with me tomorrow, call me and let me know. I got up from the table and walked out of the house to the sound of my wife crying. Epilogue. Batty contested the divorce and not wanting a prolonged legal battle, I agreed to the judge's suggestion of marriage counseling. Surprisingly, the counseling proved more beneficial than anticipated. Batty and I delved into our emotions, engaging in open and judgment-free communication. She gained insight into why she succumbed to Brian's advances, nearly jeopardizing our marriage. I, in turn, shared the pain and humiliation caused by her actions. The counselor commended our progress, and after a few sessions, I decided to move back into the house. Within a year, we rediscovered the love that defined our early marriage. Batty changed jobs, joining my company. We commuted together, enjoyed daily lunches, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to be together. We embraced shared activities, reviving the neglected Christmas Village project and completing 2 long-abandoned pieces. Pottery classes and ballroom dancing became our new adventures. To my surprise, the box of colored pens hadn't dried up, and we spent countless evenings coloring. As we cuddled under a blanket, indulging in popcorn, and watching You've Got Mail, Batty kissed me and expressed gratitude for the second chance. I responded with a smile, reminding her, that's what you do when you love someone. Yet, one evening, as we enjoyed our usual routine, Batty confessed, "Honey, there's something important I need to talk to you about." Tears welled up in her eyes, and my heart skipped a beat. Before I could react, she continued, "I'm pregnant. You're going to be a daddy." I smiled, wiping away her tears, and channeling my best Tom Hanks impression, said, "Don't cry, shop girl. Well, call me a hopeless romantic, but I'm a sucker for a happy ending." Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.